Good morning, and welcome to Farnborough, as Keith said. I mean, it's great to see so many of you here. It must mean that we did something right 18 months ago when we launched our economic connectivity review. I think, as that little animation showed, there are some real challenges for us today. I was just hearing on the radio, on Radio 4 on the way in, the challenges that London City Airport are going to face today around Extinction Rebellion and protests around carbon reduction and so on and so forth. And I hope you will see that this strategy focuses on those kinds of challenges, those behavioural changes that we're going to have to make, those legislative changes, policy asks that this strategy starts to address is going to be absolutely fundamental. I'm Rupert Clubb. I've been really fortunate to lead Transport for the South East since our inception, since our first board meeting back in 2017, and we have come a long way. And today is an opportunity for you to help us shape this next stage of our journey and get a transport strategy that is genuinely fit for purpose. Let me tell you about this place. It is absolutely fantastic. The South East is the place to live, to do business and to work. We've got fantastic national parks, the New Forest, the South Downs. Look at the connectivity. 46 million passengers a year going out of Gatwick, 80 million going out of Heathrow. All of these people need to get to those places. Southampton Port, £40 billion worth of export. Portsmouth, 1.8 million passengers a year going out of there. You look at Dover, 25 million tonnes of goods moving around and over 12 million passengers coming out of these key international gateways. Now, to my mind, we've got a real challenge balancing all these infrastructure requirements, all these needs, all the connectivity that they need with the fantastic environment that the South East has to offer. And we cannot, in developing our strategy, forsake some of those environmental assets, which is why you'll see a thread through our transport strategy. Now, if we go back, and you'll all remember this, I'm sure, 1992 Rio Summit, remember that? Remember all the definitions of sustainability? How we balance our economic needs, social and environmental, absolutely underpins how this strategy has been developed and how it's led together. So our challenge is quite simple. With 7.5 million people living in our region, which will grow, with potentially 4 million jobs to grow further, 300.3 million businesses, and 200 billion in terms of GVA. It's a significant region economically, and it is that motor for the UK economy. And if we look at the movement of goods and services, if you're in the Midlands, if you're in the north of England, you'll need those ports and airports to move goods and services around. So the connectivity within the South East is absolutely fundamental to the productivity, topical I know, the productivity of the Midlands, the north of England, the southwest and so on and so forth. So getting that right is key. We know that the South East offers some 14.7% of the UK's GVA. And if we want to rebalance the economy, if we want to improve productivity elsewhere in the country, then getting connectivity right in the South East is absolutely fundamental. So the question you might be asking, and we laid this out back in May last year when we talked about investment. Now, is it keeping pace? So you just have to look at this, a bit of analysis done by the Institute of Public Policy Research that showed planned infrastructure spending per head. Okay, these are 2017-18 figures. But it gives you a sense that despite having that sort of productivity, that GVA that the South East contributes, we're still lagging behind in terms of infrastructure investment. And you will know this yourself. Anybody who's tried to move up the M3 and connect onto the A34, it's a little bit challenging. Anybody who's got that South Coastway train, the one that trundles along from Brighton to Southampton, and it feels like there should be chickens moving around in the carriage with you. Surely a 21st century public transport system needs to be better than that. if you get to Woking Station at anything probably after 6:30 in the morning, you'll be standing. I think the stats are something like 3 out of 10 passengers on that rail service into Waterloo will be standing as they go in. So, I know there has been a lot of investment. I know there are some big ticket things that are going on within the South East. But for us, for people working and living and enjoying it, it's challenging, isn't it, moving around? Look at those orbital routes. The M25, you almost want sort of paying display meters when you're on there. The next orbital route is the South Coast, is that M27, A27. There's nothing in the middle. And so if you want to get around, either by road or by rail, it's incredibly challenging. And you hear real horror stories, don't you, about, if you're going from Ashford and you want to get to, Reading. How long will that take you on a train? 2 hours, 3 hours, possibly 4. So the question that we've got, and the question our strategy starts to challenge, is actually we need investment. We need that investment in the South East if we are to support not only the economic contribution that the South East makes, but that wider contribution to the national economy. And we lay down some thoughts within that. So Transport for the South East is about one voice for the region. 16 local transport authorities, 5 local enterprise partnerships, 46 boroughs and districts, national parks and environmental areas, all coming together to start to speak with one voice on the strategic connectivity needs for the South East. Now, this is a world that we haven't been in before. This is the opportunity for us to genuinely shape our future, to provide a prosperous, sustainable future for the South East. It was really interesting looking at the Institution of Civil Engineers' recent State of the Nation report. And that recognised the role of STBs, of subnational transport bodies. And in fact, it took it further, far further. It said STBs need to be there to think about strategic infrastructure in its widest sense. So, to my mind, that State of the Nation report talks about the traction that subnational transport bodies are getting, that ability to speak with one voice. And the fact that so many of you are here today suggests to me that you're bought into that ability for the South East to come together and say, these are the things that we need to create a sustainable future and to create a place that my kids, your families, can be proud of as we move into the 2030s, 2040s and 2050. But there are some really, really difficult issues to grapple with. And it's fair to say that transport is the massive elephant in the room when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions. It is fascinating when you start to look at the statistics and see how other industries are cleaning up their act. Quite often you'll hear in the news that power generation has been without fossil fuel generation for the last X weeks. And yet transport as an overall proportion of greenhouse gases is growing. And part of this transport strategy challenges that and says, look, and I know for some of you in the room it won't go far enough quick enough, but what we are setting out is a net zero by 2050. We've got to fundamentally rethink mobility. We have this opportunity because, when I, as you all probably do, undoubtedly a few exceptions in the room, are driving along in your car on whatever motorway or trunk road, and you're listening to the radio, and you're listening to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change saying, right, you lot, you've got 12 years to sort this out, to reduce emissions. And yet, at the same time, I'm looking at the transport statistics and saying, well, how is it that transport as this overall proportion is growing? And this transport strategy aims to really address that question and start to recognise that mobility is changing and the way in which people move about is changing. And it means that we can start to address some of these challenges that are set out. And we know that these are going to be some challenging political decisions that need to be made. But as leaders, and all of you are leaders in your sort of transport-related or other fields, actually, surely it's down to us. Surely the generations that are coming out behind are going to look to us to make sure we get transport connectivity working in a fit and sustainable and prosperous way. So it is a challenge, and as I say, I know for some of you in the room it won't go far enough quick enough. But we've got this opportunity to shape it, and your feedback into this strategy, I think, is going to be fundamental. There is no silver bullet. If there was, someone would have probably come up with it. And this strategy recognises that the interventions that we'll have to put in place over the next few years are going to be varied and many. I think, I wouldn't want you, and I don't for 1 minute think you would come away thinking that there is this magic bullet. There are tough choices that are going to have to be made. And as you know, we sit in our car listening to the IPCC report, the challenges around greenhouse gas emissions. We're part of that solution as well, or some might say part of the problem. We have to lead by example and adjust our own behaviour. And this strategy, perhaps, I think, provides some of the tools to enable that to happen. Now, a sustainable future is key. It is fundamental. What do people want out of life? They want somewhere safe to live. They want access to social care, to health care, to education. They want connectivity. They want to get from A to B simply in a cost-effective way. They want to have places to work. And they want access to green spaces. It's really important in terms of that health and well-being. And so this three-legged stool, go back to the Rio summit of economic, social, environmental, doesn't work if you take one of those legs away. It will not work, and you won't have a prosperous society. And I think, transport is that enabler. And as we move into places where we talk as mobility as a service, we know that. Why would you want to buy a car? It costs a fortune. You've got to spend, if you're a younger person, thousands to insure it. It sits on your drive for 95% of the time. Surely it's far better to be able to just say, actually, using your Alexa or your mobile phone to call on that mobility to take you from A to B, so you don't actually own that asset. And there are technologies and innovations that are evolving as we speak that mean that our transport strategy as we step out to the 2030s, 2040s becomes a very, very different world to what we're used to today. One of the key things for us as we start to finalise that transport strategy and think about the future is what powers, what responsibilities do Transport for the South East need in order to implement it? Fine words, butter no parsnips. So I can stand here in front of you today and say, these are all the things that we want to do. But we need powers devolved from central government to enable us to drive forward. So in parallel to this, we are working up a proposal for statutory status to enable us, to give us the teeth to help deliver some of this strategy. I think we are leading the way. I think as a subnational transport body, this strategy is ambitious, it's bold, it's courageous. It is going to be challenging. But in leading the way, we can't do it alone. And certainly, of course, public funding will be a key component in delivering our strategy. But as will that relationship with the private sector. It has to be a partnership. And your engagement, private sector colleagues here, is going to be crucial if we are to deliver a strategy that is fit for the future and fit for purpose. So today is about joining us and joining that conversation, getting hold of that transport strategy, ploughing through it, trying to understand what it is that we're about and where we want to take it to. And we need your input. And today, this formal launch is about getting your feedback, your input, into getting a strategy that is absolutely nailed on and sets out that transport journey for the next 30 years, set against all the challenges that I've described. I hope you have a fantastic day. I hope you get loads out of it. Thank you for joining us today at Farnborough, and I'll hand over to Anthony.